Hi, welcome to another edition of your weekly Pupdate here at Kaimana Beach. I'm Stacie Robinson from the NOAA Hawaiian Monk Seal Research Program, and with me is Aliza Milette-Winfree.
Aloha, I'm the Oahu Marine Mammal Response Coordinator for NOAA Fisheries.
And so we are out here. We're still out here with Rocky and Kaimana. I know a lot of folks have been hearing about the big event, the weaning, when Rocky is going to leave her pup and head back out to sea. And we've been waiting, saying any day now. We're still waiting. So I don't know. Did Pyro forget to give her the schedule?
Anytime Pyro gives anyone schedules, they don't listen very well. But something actually we were wondering today is, based on the fact that our prediction is, going over just a little bit.
Well, not over till tomorrow.
Not till tomorrow.
Okay, no, today's Thursday.
Today's Thursday.
All right,
Yep.
we're over.
Yep. So this is week 6. Typically, Rocky has weaned her pups on average at about 40 days. So we would have expected right about now for her to exit. It could happen right now. You might catch it live. But we were talking, and do you think that the fact that she didn't pup last year might have any effect on how long she might nurse her pup this year?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. So yeah, as she was saying, Rocky's average has been 39 to 42 days. We're at day 42 right now. But Rocky has had this really amazing run. I think straight from 2009 to 2015, she had a pup year after year after year after year. And so ladies out there, just imagine the reserves you would have in your body and your physical condition if you had a child year after year after year. So that was kind of Rocky's condition, and then she skipped 2016. So she had like this little resting year, and so now Kaimana is the first pup after that. So I think it's completely possible that having that resting year, she just didn't have a year of getting really depleted by nursing a pup and might have a little bit more reserve left. And so we might... so far everything about Kaimana here on Kaimana Beach on Oahu for the seal that's pupped 9 times on a remote beach in Kauai, it's all a little different. So I think expecting something a little different on the weaning end is reasonable too. And especially if she's in a little better condition, has more reserves than previous years, yeah, she might be able to go a little longer.
Got it. And I don't know if it's anything like my kid, who wants to nurse forever. Maybe Kaimana is just extra thirsty. Do we have any other questions yet?
Katie, she asks, how much longer can Rocky go on before starvation, before she dies of starvation? And then
Sorry, that's not funny.
Julia asks, please explain clearly what you plan to do once Rocky leaves.
Sure. So the first question is how long could Rocky go nursing before she would essentially starve to death? And I think you might be the best person to answer that type of question, so I will pivot to you.
All right. I knew this was going to come up. I looked it up earlier today. I asked some of the other experts around our office, and around 50 days is the longest nursing period we have on record. For folks that know Oahu seals, R5AY, also known as Honey Girl, she's one of these super moms up on the North Shore. She pretty routinely nurses for 50 days or in the low 50s. So something like that is totally not out of the question. As far as Rocky starving to death, these animals go on instinct, and that instinct, once her fat levels get to a low level, just biological functions are going to kick in and tell her to get back out to sea. So Rocky is not going to endanger herself at all, but what she is going to do is put every bit of extra that she has into making that pup as healthy and robust as possible.
And looking at her pup right now, I would say she's doing a damn fine job of that.
Good job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were guesstimating she's probably somewhere in the 180 to 200 pound range already.
Yowza.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the second question definitely lends to it's a good to know how heavy she is. We talked about this a bit last time we were here, trying to decide what the best management strategy was going to be for Kaimana after Rocky does leave. And so the question is what happens once she leaves and what are our plans? So we did a lot of analysis, a risk assessment on what it would be like if Kaimana stayed here or if we took her to a different location. And based on a lot of the risks that are posed here, we've decided that the best plan for her safety and well-being is to move her to a spot on Oahu where she will have more opportunities to interact with seals rather than humans. And so that will be our plan. Once she is weaned and mom leaves, mom will leave and not really be interested in interacting with pup after that. They're definitely different than us humans. But once mom does leave, we are planning to move the pup to a safer location.
A lot of people are asking how long between when Rocky leaves and you do the transfer.
So the question was how long until we transfer her to a new location from when Rocky leaves. And so we definitely discussed quite a bit. There's a lot of logistics, and Stacie was very instrumental in creating this plan. So I'm going to pass that to her.
Cool. And I know it's not going to be a very satisfactory answer, but really the answer is it depends. It's going to depend a lot on exactly what time of day Rocky weans, what the weather is like that day. So to get a little back more to, how exactly we're going to do this move, very carefully, of course. But so a couple of things we want to do. We definitely want to put a flipper tag on Kaimana. So that's going to be like a little plastic piece of identifying jewelry that will go on her back flippers. And so that's going to help us identify her when she's resighted, hopefully for years and years to come. And we're also going to vaccinate her against morbillivirus, which is a disease kind of similar to measles. If we have time, we'll put a satellite tracker on her so we can actually watch her movements. And so all of these things take a little bit of time of us, handling the animal and carefully doing all these things. And we like to do that when it's not super crazy hot. So if she weans in the middle, in the heat of the afternoon, we might give it a little while. Also, depending on the location we're going to take her, if there's, massive surf and swell that's going to be startling to the pup, we might not, we're not going to drop her in the middle of a bad situation, and we're not going to handle her in the heat of the day. So all of these things depend on timing, and really, it's all on Rocky's schedule at this point. So I think the thing to know is we're definitely waiting on Rocky. We're not going to be taking her early. We're going to wait for the two of them to totally complete their mom and pup time and wait for Rocky to head out. And then we will basically be as efficient as possible after that, kind of considering all the different logistics.
Mm-hmm. A couple people have asked, how does the mom actually leave, and will the pup follow her? Go ahead.
Yeah, so the question was how does the mom actually leave, and won't the pup follow her? And to be honest, not a lot of us ever actually see the leaving happen. Usually what happens is when, in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, when we have camps doing surveys, or else in the main islands where people call in reports, just all of a sudden one day the mom's not there with the pup anymore. So whether she leaves at night or early in the morning or during the day and just no one noticed it, we don't really know. And the answer is no, the pups don't follow them. And so the pups end up staying back. They're not really up for long distance swims and, long distance excursions yet. And I think the other really important thing to know is once they kind of get to this point that it's the end of the nursing period and ready for weaning, they're ready for it. So it's not a sad thing where the pup is desperately trying to run after mom or is missing mom or anything like that. At this point, the pup is really well nourished and ready to carry on their own. So there's not the sneaking away, running after kind of dynamic. It's just a very natural sort of break between the two of them.
So pup is super fat, essentially. How long after mom leaves does pup actually need to go out and get more nutrients?
Pups start getting out and kind of looking for food fairly right away, but they stick pretty close. They don't start making bigger movements for a few weeks, and it's really a young animal sort of learning as it goes. And so we might see pups, sticking really close to their area for the first couple weeks and eating really easy prey that's close by in shallow waters. And then as the weeks go by, they start just sort of ballooning out from there and expanding further and further.
So they're stocked up. They're not like, mom's gone, now I'm starving. They are gonna, swim around a little bit and pick at things as they're learning, but they're not desperate for mom's food or food anywhere. They're good because they're nice and juicy fat.
Yeah, exactly. Have you seen her? Yes. In fact, pups are. We think one of the reasons pups are kind of so slow to really get moving and get going is because they're just literally too fat to move much. They are. So where we think of, the loving sort of interaction that moms and kids have for, long into their life, and that's how we prepare kids for the world. The way monk seals prepare kids for the world is by making them super, super fat so that they have some time to figure it out on their own. And once mom leaves, instinct is going to kick in. Kaimana is going to be putting everything in her mouth and figuring out what's food really quickly. And that's one of the reasons why we want to put her in a safe place where she'll find really good food resources, not stuff associated with people, and give her the best chance for that instinct to kick in and really create a good, healthy wild monk seal.
I think that was actually something that really stuck with me in this process of talking about what it would be like for her if we kept her here, since she is not super hungry and not going to be looking for food. She's just going to be looking for typically other seals to interact with and learn from. And since there's not a whole lot of other juveniles hanging out here, but there are lots of human juveniles hanging out here that and adults, of course, there's just not a lot for her to interact with in a natural way, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, looking at the pup cam when it's up high, sometimes looking down at the water from below, you're like, oh, is that the seal? Nope, that's some kid. Oh, that's some kid.
Yes.
So yeah, you can see where she would get this idea, like, oh, that's a thing in the water, I should play with it. And usually that ends up badly over the long haul.
180 pounds, 200 pounds, playing with your kid?
We have a couple of questions about what Kaimana's eating. People ask, is she able to eat solid food now, and does she have teeth at this point?
She does have teeth. Those would be erupted by now. And she might be able to catch a fish now and then, but really, like right now, she is getting mom's milk. So that is still totally what she's relying on. That's what's making her huge and robust and fat. Once mom leaves, then she'll really start exploring other food sources and catching fish, and then she'll eat everything from sea cucumbers to taco to fish to eels, crustaceans, lots of different food that's down there on the ocean floor where she can dive down and get it.
Somebody asked, is it traumatic for the pup when mom leaves?
So the question is it traumatic for the pup, with the mom or the pup? Sorry, the pup, that's what I thought. The pup when mom leaves. Generally, when we see moms and pups wean, pup starts exploring and hangs out for a while, but there doesn't seem to be any big trauma. This is a biological drive for them. They have evolved to do this, and they're definitely not like humans. Point in case, we've watched moms and pups within days after weaning. Mom has left, and then pup is hanging out on that beach for a while. Mom comes back a couple days later, and they are 40 feet from each other on the beach and not even attending to one another at all. It's almost like they don't know who each other is. So there's not this really huge bond after mom leaves that they're missing out on.
I have a question.
Sure.
For the next one. What happens if Kaimana gets relocated and Rocky comes back?
So the question was, what happens if Kaimana gets relocated and Rocky comes back to Kaimana Beach? So that's likely going to happen. So Rocky uses this beach quite frequently as a haul-out location, and there are lots of demonstrations of mom and pups being in different locations all of the time, and there not being any big to-do about it. Again, they're not really recognizing each other again when they see each other anyway, or if they do recognize each other, they don't seem to interact. So I think it would be a very normal thing for mom to come out, haul out, do her thing, and not really be very disturbed that her pup is not here. Do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think that's exactly right.
Okay.
We have a question from Omi Nalani. She asks, will volunteers be monitoring Kaimana when she is relocated?
So the question was, will volunteers be monitoring Kaimana when she is relocated? And so depending on the location that she's relocated to, we have a couple different options right now, depending on logistics and weather, and best case scenario when she weans. So depending on where that location is, we will very well have volunteers out monitoring and doing outreach in that location. Mm-hmm.
And then I think if we're thinking bigger picture, like after the day of relocation, absolutely. That's one of the reasons we're going to tag her, so that she has some nice evidence identifiers that people can see. And the volunteer groups will absolutely be looking for her, monitoring her progress. And that's something that through the Hawaiian Monk Seal Research Program Facebook page, I'm sure we can share with any follow-up media with Civil Beat. And we will absolutely share that with the world, because we know people have been watching them. People are more bonded to these guys than they're going to look like once they wean. And we know people care about Kaimana and they want to know what's up with her, and we will absolutely share that, and she will be monitored very closely.
Has it been unusual for you guys having so much attention from the public and interest? Like, have you been getting nonstop calls?
Yes.
So the question was, is this weird for us? And getting this much attention and notoriety, and the answer is, well, yes it is.
No, biologists always have film crews. We're the cool kids.
Oh, the internet. Thank you.
Leanne asks, is the behavior that Kaimana is showing us these days pretty typical of monk seal pups?
So the question was is the behavior that Kaimana is demonstrating these days pretty typical of monk seal pups? I think that the interactions that you're seeing with mom and the nursing behavior and the exploring, super, super typical. They definitely start playing with, hopefully seaweed and sea cucumbers in the water and things like that. Sticks maybe on the beach. Unfortunately, we've definitely got to see some interactions with some slippers and some beach balls and buoys and things like that. So while it's normal for them to play with these things, it's obviously not the most ideal natural setting for it to occur in.
We have a question from Julia. Once Rocky leaves, what will happen if Kaimana gets into the natatorium
again? We'll probably have a chance to find out.
So the question was, what happens if Rocky gets into the natatorium again once Kaimana leaves? Or is it the other way around?
Kaimana once Rocky leaves.
Either way.
But yes. Yeah, she's definitely shown a lot of curiosity for getting in there, so it seems very possible that if we don't move her quickly enough, she may very well end up in there again. And it's going to be a lot like the last times. Once we get a report that she's in there, we will come down. If she appears to be stuck, we will do what we can to, physically take her out of the natatorium and bring her back to the beach. The last couple times, she found her way out on her own with Rocky, of course. So if she gets in again, I guess we'll find out if she knows the way out on her own. And if she doesn't, then we'll have to intervene and take her out to safety.
But I would say that is definitely a contributing factor in our risk assessment to determine that this might not be the safest place for her. So hopefully mom will wean, and we'll be able to get her in a good period of time where we won't have to worry about that.
Somebody asks, is there any information that is available to the public that shows a family tree of the monk seals in Hawaii?
Oh, Stacie, the question was, is there a family tree available?
That would be awesome. We should totally make one. We know some bits of family trees. So we know some moms basically the moms that have been pupping on sites that are nice and visible on some of the main islands. We know their pups. We know what's happened to them. We've never made a good graphic out of it, but that's a great idea.
Stacie loves making graphics, and she's really, really good at it.
I love both genealogy and cartoons, so we'll see what we can do. Thanks for the suggestion.
Gregor asks, what is the average lifespan of a monk seal?
Stacie, what is the average lifespan of a monk seal?
Average is probably mid-20s. A really old monk seal is 30. The oldest we've had is 33.
How old is Rocky?
Rocky is 17.
And how old is Kaimana today?
She is
42
6 weeks old.
days.
Yes. 6 times
How many
7.
days? How many days is that?
42 days.
Mm-hmm. Wait, so if she's 17 and they live maybe till 30, this could be her midlife crisis. That is why she had a pup in Waikiki. I figured it out.
Scientific breakthrough happening right here. Brought to you by Civil Beat.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any way to know who the father of the pup is?
Dr. Robinson, is there any way to know who Daddy is?
Right now, basically no. Genetic tests could tell us that. We've typically had really bad luck with genetic tests with monk seals because they actually have really low genetic diversity. So with the standard markers that have been used over time, most monk seals look just about exactly like other monk seals. But another really exciting breaking news thing is that some collaborators of ours at Johns Hopkins University just published the monk seal genome. So now we have the entire monk seal genome sequenced. It was Benny's genome, for those of you who know Benny, the master of hook eating over on the west side.
Did we find the gene that makes him do silly things?
As far as I know, they have not isolated which one is the troublesome gene, but it's clearly in that sequence, so I'm hopeful.
Yes.
I'm hopeful they'll find it. But the other...
Kaimana has that troublesome gene.
Kaimana's got the slipper eating gene, apparently. But I'm also really hopeful with the genome that this is going to give us some new tools to get better genetic tests, so we could do something like take Kaimana's DNA, and that's even, not even invasive, just a little snippet of tissue that we'll get when we flipper tag her. We can take that, get DNA, and then could do paternity tests if we have DNA samples from males on the island as well.
So I don't know if you have the answer to this question, sorry. But how big would the population need to increase for that genetic diversity to be more dispersed rather than a nice bottleneck?
Well, and so the main issue with that, so I don't have a magic number, but the biggest issue is not so much how big it is right now, but it's how small it has gotten and how long it has stayed small. So basically that genetic diversity has been depleted. And so then the way you get that back is either from new genes coming in, like from other populations. We don't have other populations of monk seals, so we got what we got. And then the other thing is mutation. And mutation takes a really long time to rack up new bits of diversity. So we would definitely be looking at and I mean, that's why, even with a little over 1,000 animals now, we still see this really low diversity because it's a legacy of tremendous reductions in numbers over time.
Another reason why a female increasing this population as slow as it does is still pretty important. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
2 questions. Do monk seals return to the same spot they were born when they give birth? And what are monk seals' biggest predators?
So the first question was, do monk seals return to the same spot where they were born to give birth? And we just had one of our data gurus go through all of our data, and it looks to be about 60% of the time they return to their natal beach, or at least a beach in that area. So that is also one of the determining factors in our analysis to determine if we should keep Kaimana here or move her somewhere safer. The sooner we move her after she weans, the more likely she would imprint on a different beach, which would be less crowded and much better for pups for her in the future.
And just a note on that, a little bit of Rocky's history that I had to look up today. This is thanks to data gurus Brenda and Tracy in our office who know the history of every monk seal. Rocky was actually herself born at a really busy beach on Kauai. She was born at Mahalapu, and she was translocated to a remote beach on the north shore of Kauai, and that remote beach is actually where she returned to have her 9 pups before coming here for her midlife crisis. So they do have some site fidelity, and when you move them when they're very, very young, you can actually encourage that sort of imprinting on a new site, and that was really successful with Rocky as well as other seals that we've moved from busy beaches to remote beaches in the past. So we're pretty hopeful that we can establish some really good behaviors and good area for Kaimana.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are really glad that we've got a pretty good history of doing this, and it being really successful in the past. So we're pretty confident in our assessment.
That's a good segue to a couple of questions we have. What is the survival rate of the pups you have relocated, and what are the risks of moving Kaimana?
So the first question, Dr. Robinson, is what is the survival rate of the pups that we have relocated?
So within the main islands, we have relocated 12 animals from busy beaches to elsewhere. And I believe it is 8 are still survived to adulthood. 2 of them were confirmed to die, and 2 of them just were not sighted again, so we're not really sure what their survival was. So that's pretty good. And so I guess to give context to that, just following animals that are born and their survival, just survival from the weaning stage to 1 year is about 80% in the main island. So it's, and that's good. And especially like compared to in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands where that might be 40 to 60%, it's really good in the main islands, but it's still not 100%. So, and I guess that gets a little to the second question was what risks are there when we move her? And really the issue is there are just risks to being a young monk seal. You have to learn how to feed yourself. There are sharks and competing predators. There are fish hooks. There are nets. There are boats in the water. There are dogs on the beach. All of these things, and there are diseases. All of these things are things that have led to death of monk seals.
And that was a really important thing to note in our risk assessment is we took all those risks that she just listed and we categorized them for each location and we tried to assess how high the risk was for each of those categories for each location compared to this one. And that is how we were able to determine where the different options of locations that we would take her and how those risks were actually lower there than they are here. And so some of those things that she was talking about, which would be fishery interactions or dogs or boating accidents, or human interactions, getting really used to humans and wanting to play with humans and then not surviving to be a healthy adult. There are different ways that we can mitigate those things. And so we're being really proactive in our efforts to mitigate the fishery interactions and dog interactions in the other locations that we are potentially going to move her to. So we're working with our partners to work within the community to decrease those risks as much as possible.
We have a question from Grace. What will it take for monk seals to be considered not endangered?
Dr. Robinson, how do we recover the population so that they're not endangered anymore?
Oh, goodness. I think minimizing disturbance, maximizing breeding success, trying to do what we can to maximize survival of young seals so that they grow up and contribute to the population. These are all really important. These are things that we do as part of our work in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands. We have camps out there surveying populations as well as disentangling animals from nets, taking animals off of really sharky beaches and putting them on the less sharky beaches, giving animals vaccination to avoid catastrophic disease. And then here on the main islands, it's a lot of working with people. We work with a number of agencies trying to figure out what in the world to do about feral cats and the threat of toxoplasmosis, a disease that has killed a number of seals. We work a lot with just community relations and trying to encourage coexistence so that we don't see any more intentional killings of monk seals. We're working with different fisheries organizations and stakeholders to try and limit the encounters with hooks and nets and all of these things that are threats to monk seals.
I have a question. Do the different monk seals throughout the islands have distinct personalities?
So the question was, do different monk seals across the islands have distinct personalities? I think we associate a lot of these different individuals with different things that they get into, or different areas that they like to hang out with most, or in the specific areas that, we talked about one seal who essentially never leaves his tide. I mean, he leaves his tide pool, but he doesn't really get seen anywhere else. That's sort of his kingdom. Depending on their age, you're going to see different levels of dominance in different areas, and so it sort of changes over time as well. But we definitely mentioned Benny, who is kind of one of our troublemakers. But I know
he's been called Benny the Biter.
Benny the Biter, yes. But I know the volunteers, especially who watch over them day in and day out and spend 8 hours a day with these animals, they start to really see different traits coming out. Do you have any individuals that you would say have a specific personality that you would relate to? Or not relate to, but
I don't know if I relate to. I do think of Benny as a troublemaker. I tend to think of Rocky as a really chill seal, just based, not that I've had interactions with her, but just based on where she goes. Man, she is not bothered by much, so there are just a lot of little, there are just a lot of little things like that make animals seem like they've got some personality. Wasn't she the seal that
went up on the sidewalk in Waikiki in the middle of the night and during Halloween?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Rocky. She's
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you were joking.
No.
Wendy asks, when she's moved, will she be moved where other seals are?
So that is definitely the plan. That was one of the factors in determining where would be best for her versus here. We definitely want her to be around other seals that she can socialize with and learn from, versus a bunch of people that she wants to socialize with and learn from. So yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, and actually I just want to throw in a plug, since we actually have some public attention right now. I want to throw in a plug for the volunteer group and the Monk Seal Hotline, because that's how we know all of this. So because people call in monk seal sightings, because we have this dedicated volunteer group that's out there telling us where seals are, we actually have a database of all of those sightings, what animal was seen on what beach on what day. And so in this whole risk assessment process, one of the first things we did was we looked through that whole sightings database and we looked at what areas on Oahu are getting used by seals. What sorts of seals are using them? Is it the boys' den? Is it all a bunch of adult males that hang out and fight in one area versus, pups that tend to hang out in another area? So having that information about the seals and where they are and how often they're using different areas was absolutely crucial for us to be able to make a good decision on this case, and for so many other things that we try to do to manage these animals in the main islands. So for anyone out there listening, if you're listening to this, you're a monk seal fan, so absolutely call the hotline and let us know when you see seals. And Aliza, what's that number?
220-7802. Thank you.
Good teamwork. Good segue again. How do you volunteer?
So you can look up the Hawaii. Actually, do you guys you have a new website? h-mar.org. There is a. Okay. There is a link on that website where you can sign up to be a volunteer. They have a lot of different trainings that you become part of so that you can understand a lot about behavior and biology and how best to interact with the public. But I know that this is a scenario where they got stretched thin. There are 3 different monk seal pups that they've been watching over this period of time, and this one was definitely intense, so I'm certain they could use some new resources. So please do look up h-mar.org, and you can also find that in the Civil Beat link somewhere on there. On the video, okay.
On the live stream.
On the live stream, okay. Sure, actually we have a question from our amazing audience.
You mentioned that the survival rate is greater here in the Hawaiian Islands versus the
Northwest Hawaiian Islands, yeah.
I would imagine it be the reverse because of the dangers that are present from human interaction with the babies. So why is there such a discrepancy?
So the question was that, we were talking about the survival rate actually being greater here than in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, which is fairly surprising, being that there's a whole lot more human presence here. Stacie, why is it that the survival rate is actually lower in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands than it is here?
Yeah, that's actually probably one of the most counterintuitive things that we work with. So yeah, thanks for bringing up that question. And there are a number of reasons. One of the biggest is low juvenile survival in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands. So like I said before, in the main islands, we see about 80% survival from pups that wean to 1 year. In the Northwest, that can be more like 40 to 60%. One of the big reasons is food limitation. So the young seals actually have problems getting enough to eat and finding enough food. And one of the big reasons why, that we might think, oh, it's such a pristine environment, there should be so much more there. But there are more seals. But then the other big thing is there's a lot more competing predators. So that's a very predator-dominated ecosystem. So the big jacks or alua, the sharks and other things that sort of, even if they're not necessarily eating a young monk seal, they're kind of like the bullies on the playground, and they end up sort of following them along. Monk seals are able to exploit food resources that are kind of tucked away and hidden on the bottom that these other predators may not notice. And so then they're kind of like the bullies on the playground stealing their lunch. So they will actually follow monk seals around and then get the food that they were going for. We also have sadly high incidents of entanglements in marine debris. So the big Pacific gyres, the big currents that sort of swirl around in the North Pacific, they concentrate some of the debris in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands areas, and monk seals are really good at getting stuck in that. At one particular site with the worst survival stats, French frigate shoals, Galapagos sharks have just developed this really particular habit of zeroing in on monk seal pups, and they might even take them right off the beach in front of their moms, and so that really limits survival at French frigate shoals. Those are probably the biggies. But yes, so there are a lot of threats in the main islands, and the encouraging thing about the main islands is since a lot of the threats have to do with people, that means we can mitigate a lot of them, and we have a lot of opportunity to change what's threatening monk seals in the main Hawaiian Islands. And then even in this other ecosystem, it's still not easy to be a monk seal.
We have a couple more questions. Is there a typical time of day that moms leave their pups, and what is their primary food source?
So the first question was, is there a typical time of day that mom leaves? And I don't think that we have that information. I think that often we see pup one day and the next day pup is or we see mom and pup and the next day mom is gone, and pup is fine, pup's just hanging out doing his or her thing, and mom's off foraging and not to return.
Yeah, and this thing where we have 24-hour people and video coverage of a mom and pup pair, this is so new, and it's kind of exciting. Maybe we'll actually catch the moment, but normally we don't. Normally someone walks down the beach one day, and even on surveys, like we don't sit at a mom and pup 24 hours a day. We might walk an island in one day, and then the next day, and you just don't see mom anymore. So yeah, we might actually end up learning a lot from Rocky and Kaimana with all the eyes on them.
I have one question. Is the regular visits to the natatorium, is it, not that you would know this, or chance because you can't speak to Rocky or Kaimana, but is it possible that Rocky was training Kaimana to find that as a food source?
So the question was, with all the visits to the natatorium, is it possible that Rocky was training Kaimana to find that as a food source? Which, of course, we don't speak monk seal, so we can't ask them, and we don't know. I don't think we've ever gotten a report of Rocky being in the natatorium before Kaimana was in there. Of course, no one probably watched Rocky as closely as they watched Kaimana. But also, given the response of both seals that first night, they were both really stressed out. And Rocky, as many will remember, was kind of swimming back and forth and calling for her pup. So it did not seem like the pup was somewhere that mom had sent it. But that's kind of my perception. You were there that night. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I would certainly think that this is a mischievous fat pup. Just getting into things and exploring, and ended up finding something interesting and keeps going back. But also, I think that we don't have a lot of indication that, in general, moms are teaching their young to find food in different areas, since they're really focused on nursing during this time. It's more when mom leaves and pup is really exploring more and gets hungry enough that she'll start figuring out where to eat.
Why aren't there more monk seals moving to the main Hawaiian Islands since survival rates are so much better?
So the question is, why aren't more monk seals moving to the main Hawaiian Islands from the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, since survival rate here is so much better?
They never read our annual reports. We can't get them to do it. But it's kind of like the site fidelity that we...
Be on late night. I'm just saying.
Totally on late night. This is why biologists get their own TV shows all the time.
Stephen Colbert, hi!
Stephen would love this monk seal.
Totally.
We can't name it Colbert though. Kaimana is a really good name. It's stuck. But yeah, the monk seals, they are born. They're born where they're born, and most of them stick around there. Maybe like 10% of animals leave the place they were born and go to a completely different island. Kind of counting the main islands as one area, but like for going from Laysan to French Frigate Shoals, that's a really long distance, and there's really deep water in between, and so not much to navigate by if you're a monk seal. So not a lot of seals make that move. Some do. We've had one seal start from Kure and end up all the way down at the Big Island. So it's not impossible. But yeah, they don't know what's on the other side.
Jackie asks, what was the longest a mom stayed with a pup before weaning?
So the question was, what was the longest mom stayed with a pup before weaning? And we were talking 50 days or so? Mm-hmm. About 50 days. That's a tired mama.
No more questions right now.
All right.
Okay.
We got a question moving on.
I have two questions actually. What does Rocky have more females or males? That's one question. And the other one is, how long does she have to be gone for you to consider her gone?
Okay.
On time?
Yeah. So the first question was whether Rocky has more female than male pups. And half the people in my office would probably smack me for not knowing, because they're all sitting in front of their computers totally knowing, and I'm not sure. So you have one Stump the Scientist for today. But as far as how long does she need to be gone for us to consider her gone, the standard operation for mother monk seal is to just get out of Dodge, to leave. There's not really like a transition period. They don't go and come back a lot. Sometimes they might, come back that afternoon and then leave for real the next day, but there's not a lot of back and forth. So once she's gone, we can be confident that she's gone. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What can the beach-going public do to minimize the stress on Kaimana when Rocky leaves?
That's a great question. The question was, what can the beach-going public do to minimize the stress on Kaimana once Rocky leaves?
So I would suggest that folks do a lot of what they're doing on the beach now, which is keeping their distance when she is resting on shore. The volunteers and lifeguards will be able to give you guidelines, and hopefully they'll have a seal resting area set up if she is on shore, just like she is now. We would also suggest that if she's swimming around in the water, to not be in the water at that time.
Any other questions from the audience? I have one.
There's a question or four in the audience. Please go ahead. Yes.
Ties into this last question.
Okay.
Sunday, there's a chance that she will be here, or they might be here together, and they have that paddleboard race.
So the wonderful woman in the audience has brought up the fact that there will be a paddleboard race that ends here at Kaimana on Sunday, and so there is a potential that if Mom and Pup are here that day, or just Pup is here that day, that there might be some interactions to be concerned about. And so just as we had a stand-up paddleboard race, I think on week 1 or 2 of them being out here, we worked with the organizers to make sure that everyone that was participating in the race was very aware of the threats, both to them personally as well as to the animals for disturbance. So we would again work with the organizers to make sure that people were being safe for themselves and we're giving the animals the distances that they needed. And we'll also again have volunteers on scene. DoCare might be checking in, as well as Office of Law Enforcement and HPD.
Where's Charles? We haven't seen him.
Girl power. It's just, it's the new wave. Dr. Littman is prepping to head out on a cruise. It's a research cruise. It's going to be leaving tomorrow. They're heading out to the Northwest Hawaiian Islands. Are you going on this cruise?
I am not. That's
You're
why
not?
I'm here in his stead.
Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of crazy prep work that has to be done to get ready for that. They've deployed several field camps out on the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, so they're bringing gear. We've got animals that were rehabilitated, and one of them is being brought back, so there's just a lot of intense things going on for him to prep for that to leave tomorrow.
We understand.
He still loves you all. Sure.
Observing them swimming together, these little bubbles, is that, what kind of behavior is that? Is it just for fun, or is it something, what is it?
So the question is, actually they had an observation that mom and pup might be blowing bubbles when they're in the water together, and she's wondering what kind of behavior that is and why they do it. I don't know that we have a specific answer to that. I think that, she's exploring her environment, and just like my kid, I feel like when they're toddlers, they are trying to manipulate and break things as much as possible to see how they can bend the will of matter, and so maybe she's just being a toddler. That's my scientific analysis. Thoughts?
It's as good as any data I've got.
They sure seem to be peaceful animals.
Will Kaimana lose the white fur on her belly? Is that what you're saying?
So there's been an observation that there's some discoloration or different coloration on Kaimana's belly. Dr. Robinson, can you please describe what that is and if that might change?
It's just a normal coat of a pup. Pups just have these nice, light, shiny, silvery coats with kind of a lighter belly. And so you guys probably saw she was very black when she was first born. And then when pups wean, they molt into this silver coat. And now she will, in about a year, she'll molt from that. And then she'll have a very similar coat to her mom. So monk seals, once they mature, they basically molt about once a year. As they're getting close to it, their fur gets all slimy green with algae, and then they molt and they have a nice new shiny coat. When Rocky molted, she would have looked pretty shiny as well, and then it just gets dull and dirty and algae covered with the year.
How many people at NOAA watch the live stream, and for how long?
So I think this is actually something I wanted to bring up. The question was how many people watch Civil Beat every day at NOAA to monitor the live stream. I would say that every single one of our colleagues watches it for part or if not all of the day up on the corner of their screen while they're doing other things, just to peek in as much as they can. And then other people who aren't even monk seal people have commented in our lunchroom asking about what they saw earlier today and yesterday and the day before. So I would say a significant amount of folks are. And I think that really speaks to something I wanted to express, which is we are scientists, we're managers, we're really focused on conservation of the species and, talking about the biology and how mom and pup are just going to, depart from each other and not really care about each other, and they're very different. And I think sometimes scientists and managers can come off as maybe uncaring. We're getting ready to move a pup away from where mom usually is, and people are really concerned about how mom and pup are going to feel. And I would just say that the folks that we work with that have been working really hard to determine what's best for these animals, we've literally dedicated our lives to working with this species, and we care very, very deeply about them, which is probably why we can't stop watching the live feed. So thank you for providing that to us. We don't usually get access. at a minute-by-minute basis. So, yeah, just to say that this is a very well thought out plan by a lot of people who care extremely deeply about these animals.
And we've certainly been watching a little more closely, a little more often now that we're waiting for her to wean and see when exactly that happens. Like all of you, probably.
We have another question in the audience. Yes.
Kind of along those same lines, and I know this is totally uncharted territory being on a popular beach, but I think it would be a really good idea. And is there a possibility that Rocky, I saw her bringing her pup, down the beach earlier today. Is there a remote possibility that she might take it? She's familiar with the wahoo, take the pup and go somewhere and be there with it and then leave?
So
Great idea.
so the question was, do we think that Rocky might swim with pup down to a different location and then wean at a different location? I'm not certain how often they move to a different location and wean from that spot, or how far away that is from their natal area, but they certainly track up and down, and they've gone up towards Queens and past Elks already, and so they certainly could haul out somewhere and then mom leaves at that point. But again, it would be the same sort of scenario, still in Waikiki. They haven't gone much farther than the two areas, just down, up and down. And so again, a similar scenario that we would have here.
So you think the baby's not strong enough to get to a more remote location yet?
Stacie, would she be strong enough to swim far to a remote location on her own at this point?
It's just not what they do. No, it takes pups a few weeks or even months to really expand their kind of their movements and their territories to something that would be comparable to an adult's range of motion. So right now she's a little butterball. She's good at rolling around. She's good at playing. She's not going to be good at swimming long distance. And despite how great it would be for government efficiency for Rocky to move this pup for us, it is not something that we see mother monk seals doing. So yeah, it's not something we would expect. It would be a lovely idea.
I forgot.
If you relocate the pup to like a secluded beach, then will her internal instincts kick in?
We just had the question, if we relocate the pup to a secluded beach, will her internal instincts kick in? And yes, absolutely. That's exactly what will happen. And one of the really key points in the reasoning of wanting to move her very soon after she's weaned is just how we were talking. Right now, she's all about nursing, and she's all about being a fat butterball that's just sort of playing in the shallows. She hasn't really been swimming deep and diving deep and, finding food resources to exploit here. So even though she was raised here, from the standpoint of being a seal and making a living as a seal, this is still a completely new environment for her too. So if we pick her up while she's just in that completely goofy, bubbly baby stage and we plop her on another beach, she really isn't going to notice the difference in a lot of ways. So the natural instinct to dive and find food really has not kicked in yet. And so she hasn't been doing that here. And so it'll just be very similar to bring her to another beach where she hasn't been foraging, and that instinct will kick in and she will learn to do her thing and be a really successful seal.
And because we've done this in the past, we've been able to observe the weaned pups that we've moved, to watch their behaviors and watch them learn how to forage in the new location and socialize with other seals. So we definitely have a good idea of what that would look like.
Yeah. And in addition to the 12 that we've moved in the main Hawaiian Islands, in the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, we've moved seals between sites a number of times. And we've even done studies putting dive trackers and telemetry tags on the seals we moved and on the seals that were born in that location, and their movement patterns are just about indistinguishable. So really, even if a seal is not from an area, when you put them there when they're young and learning, they still get it, and they're gonna learn that area just as well as seals that are from there.
But my dog and my cat have the what do you call it?
The chips.
Chips. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those chips. Is that similar to that?
There was a question if we have something similar to the chips that people put in their dogs and cats, and yes, we do have pit tags that are a standard part of when we tag a seal. We put in a plastic tag with a number that people will read, and there's also a pit tag that can be scanned so that if they ever break off that plastic tag, we can still figure out if that's a seal that we know. Yeah.
How will the pup be transported? Will it be by truck or by boat?
That's a clever ploy to try to get us to tell you where we're taking her. That will depend on the needs of the location to which she is transported. Thank you for your question.
Oh, we have a
So
question.
will you be posting
Yeah.
updates?
I live in Stacie, and for the last 3 or 4 nights, Kaimana around between 2 and 4 in the morning just cries incessantly.
That must be pleasant.
No, because my worry is somebody's missing her. So I'm out on the lanai, looking down and making sure that nobody's. And I just wondered if that's her wanting to nurse or trying to tell Rocky something. Or
Mama, wake up! I'm hungry, Mama.
Very, very well could be.
So So the question is actually from a resident of the Sansuchi, which is right above where mom and pup like to rest during the day and at night, right where pup was born. And she's been hearing a lot of noise coming likely from Kaimana between 2 and 4 a.m. I'm very familiar with that timing, but yeah, so the question is why is she doing it? And it certainly could be just to communicate with mom that she's hungry and time to play and she doesn't want to sleep anymore and why are we still sleeping and let's go do something, or just singing the song of her people. Any other thoughts? Okay. We do have one more. She's been trying very hard to ask a question, so go ahead, yeah.
So I saw this really great NOAA video about where they put the critter cams on the juveniles and then they were hanging out with each other, which I thought was amazing and wonderful. So hopefully she will be in a location where there will be other seals that she can hang out with,
Yeah, so
small, younger seals.
the comment and question from the crowd was there's critter cams out on certain, or there has been critter cams put on seals, and you can actually see them interacting with each other, different juveniles playing with each other, learning and exploring together. And the question was, will Kaimana be located to a spot with other seals for her to interact with? And yes, that is actually one of the determining factors of why we wanted to move her and where we're choosing to move her to. And I think that about wraps it up.
We had a ton of people on the live stream commenting to thank you guys and say that it's so great that you're spreading all this information. So thank you.
Well, thank you all for caring so much about what we've been caring about for so long.